Thank you so much for being here, and I'm truly touched by the interest that you all have in this leadership race, and I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy to address the issues of all Canadians, but particularly those of the West who have been routinely and systematically excluded from participating in Canadian political life. We can't prosper as a country unless all regions of the country are thriving and prospering and being treated fairly. And so my pledge as a leader is to treat all portions of the country fairly, but of course to address the very real issues that are facing the West. And so I'm not naive enough to think that if we can build a pipeline, everything's going to be handy, and all the resentment is going to go away. There's issues that are spanning decades and generations that need to be addressed. So I'm glad to be here today. I'll talk for maybe 20, 25 minutes, and then I'll take your questions. I will talk about my platform as best I can, and if I forget anything, hopefully it'll come up in Q&A. So I never thought I would be a politician. I thought I would be a business person. I started and operated my own business in Oshawa, which is just east of Toronto. I was in the furniture industry. I started my own furniture store, and I slowly began to become more politically engaged as I saw that this was more than just about government waste. They were starting to come for our freedoms as well. And so we can all gripe about government waste, but when they cross that line and start to come after us for what the values that we have and the beliefs that we have, that's where I draw the line. So I went to law school thinking actually that I might get involved in defending religious liberty and freedom of conscience and things like that. And I did do that for a little bit. I was involved with an intervening group that intervened on behalf of Trinity Western University in 2015. And I know a lot of lawyers that are involved with that. I saw a great one this morning, John Carpe from the JCCF. So there's a lot of good lawyers out there, but I began to realize that even with the best lawyers, the law and common sense on your side, even that is often not enough to win in an environment where judges are often trying to rewrite the law and doing other types of things to push liberal and left-leaning agendas. So I thought, you know what, I think I'd be better placed in politics. And so I got into politics, and I made a commitment to myself and my family. I wasn't in it for the career. I was in it to advance conservative principles as best and as quickly as I could. And anytime an opportunity comes forward to do that, I take that opportunity. So as luck would have it, I don't believe in luck, but as things progressed, I had several opportunities to be the leader that I wish that we should have as a party leader. And I started my campaign with the campaign slogan, "Conservative without apology," because I was sick of conservatives apologizing and jumping through the hoops that the media puts up for us over and over again. And yes, I believe we need to be smart in how we behave, but we can't water down our approach and move to the center. We have to be strong on our issues, and we have to have a compelling vision that the country can buy into. And so during this time, very early on in the campaign, I criticized Dr. Theresa Tam for her advice that she gave us and her complicity with dictates from the World Health Organization. And I was slammed by national media. I was called racist and all types of things. Certain politically correct elements in our own party tried to eject me. And it was a challenging time. I didn't want my campaign to be derailed so early. I hadn't been able to get into other things. And I spoke about it with my wife, and I said, you know what, I got into this campaign for this very reason. We're always apologizing when we shouldn't be apologizing, and I'm not going to back down. And she said, Derek, don't give him an inch. And so I thank my wife for her support, and I didn't give an inch. And now nobody criticizes me for talking about this. It's very clear that we followed all sorts of inappropriate advice. And we're worse off for it. More Canadians have died than should have, based on the type of advice that we were following. You look at other countries that dealt with this differently. And now, we went from saying this wasn't a problem and that, blaming China was racist, to saying we have to be locked down forever. And, we have to basically, hole up until, who knows, a vaccine comes or whatever else it is. So there's been too many encroachments on freedom of speech and freedom of conscience and all of these things. This is an issue we can all agree on, and we need to focus on that, because the Liberals have been busy undermining the very liberties that hold our country together, and all we can say is, well, if you vote for me and you put your kids in soccer, you'll get $200 at the end of the year. I mean, these are not the types of arguments that win hearts and minds. We need to have an election that's pure conservative. We need to have a platform that's pure conservative, that touches on all the issues and has a compelling vision for the country and deals with the freedoms that we're lacking. So I've been the strongest candidate when it comes to dealing with the freedom issues. So freedom of speech, of course, is under attack in this country. We have bills like Bill C-16. We have university campuses which are practicing cancel culture. We have social media, which is actively banning people with different views. Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you. That's great. So we have social media, which is actively banning people with conservative views or different views. We have companies like Google, where there's good evidence that they're messing with the algorithms. So when you search something, you get something, basically less conservative, or you'll be searching for one thing, and you'll get a whole page of sites that tell you why what you're searching for is wrong. I mean, it's crazy what's going on behind the scenes, and these large companies have such control over the information that we see, and we can't have a free and open democratic society when we can't even get access to information. And we were seeing companies like YouTube that were saying any video that would contradict public health advice on COVID would be banned. I mean, the health advice changes every day. So I mean, depending on the different advice we're getting from different countries, any video should be banned. So we're going to be dealing with social media banning and shadow banning, and there's great ways to do that. These guys claim that they're a neutral platform, and they get freedom from the liability of libel and other types of things that a newspaper would be liable for. But because they claim to be a platform, you can't touch them. So if they're going to claim to be neutral, they better be neutral. And so I'm going to address that. And I think that's an important aspect of the free speech and the informational slant that we're seeing in this country. We're also seeing issues with parental rights. So we have issues with, well, I'll just go right into it. For example, there's talks of mandatory vaccinations when it comes to COVID-19, and we're partnering with companies in China that are, we can't trust anything that comes out of China, and yet we're making a vaccine for a disease that started there. So I've been the only candidate that's been very clear on no mandatory vaccinations. Now, if you want to get a vaccination, you're free to get one. It's a free country. You can do your research. If you think that it's a good thing to get, you can get it. But I don't believe that we should be forced. I don't believe that our freedom should be limited because of that choice. And I don't believe that parents should be forced to, have their kids take medical treatments that they don't want them to. So I've been very clear on that. I've been clear on the fact that the way that we've responded to COVID is not the best way to do it. And I think that, yes, there's certain safety precautions we need to take, but we can't afford to shut the economy down every 2 years or every so often that a virus comes out of China. This is the fourth time this has happened. So we can't do this over and over again. We can't afford to do it, and it's killing us. It's killing small businesses. I'm going to talk a little bit here about Western alienation, and I'm not going to come here as an Easterner and tell you, oh, everything's great, and we just have to build a pipeline or whatever. The sentiment is so serious. I'm not promising I can fix it, but I'll tell you, if there was a solution, it would look something like this. We need to address equalization payments. We need to address representation issues, both in the House of Commons and the Senate. We also need to address provincial sovereignty issues. And so all of these things need to be addressed. The only real way to address many of those things is a constitutional convention to make constitutional changes. So I'm committed as a leader to being in favor of that. We have a lot of conservative premiers across the country. Could be a good time to do that. But I think that that is our only hope to quelling dissatisfaction here in Alberta. I also believe that we need to get out of these international arrangements that are impacting our sovereignty. So I'm the only candidate that is against being in the Paris Agreement. And I wish I wasn't. In fact, I've given the other candidates ample opportunity to change their tune on that, and they haven't. So, vote accordingly based on that. There's no benefit to the Paris Agreement for us. The Paris Agreement probably should be called the Wealth Transfer Agreement between Canada and China. It makes no sense. China can increase their emissions until 2030. We have to decrease ours by 30%. So there's no point in for people who say, oh, well, we don't really have to meet those targets. Well, the aspirational goal of Paris is carbon zero by the second half of this century, which means no more energy industry. So whether you're going to meet it or not, how can that be your aspirational goal as a conservative, right? So we can't be in the Paris Agreement. Obviously, we have to get rid of some of this other legislation that Trudeau has brought in. That's a no-brainer. But we have to do more than that, and we have to get out of these UN agreements that are impacting our sovereignty.
Yes.
So,
absolutely.
So the other things I've been speaking about as far as the UN is concerned, obviously the UN Mass Migration Compact, the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. Some of these agreements sound good in theory, but the fact is that we have a good constitutional arrangement when it comes to respecting Indigenous rights. And the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples adds far more uncertainty into the mix. And we already have enough issues with energy development and resource development. We don't need to throw more into it. So I've been very clear on those. I'm the only candidate who has said that we shouldn't give another dollar to the World Health Organization. These things shouldn't be that challenging right now, based on what we've seen. And I don't know why it's so hard for some of these other candidates to commit to these things. We know that the advice that we got from the World Health Organization was flawed, and they were getting false information from China. And we are giving them $850 million. That's a lot of money. We shouldn't be giving them anything. So I've been clear on that for quite some time. I'm also dead set against green subsidies. And based on certain reports from, for example, Canadians for Affordable Energy, I have the strongest rankings when it comes to my energy plan. For one, being against Paris, but also being against the energy subsidies. And the other candidates seem to are wishy-washy on some of those things. So that's an issue as well. I actually have a great small business plan as well, but I don't even, it seems like there's so many other issues that are at front and center, but we do need to focus on made in Canada. And one of the issues, one of the issues that I've said for some time is we have to stop sticking to these sort of I'm not sure how to call them, but these lingering myths about conservatism, like, oh, we have to be in favor of free trade all the time, even if it's with a country like China that is using all kinds of predatory tactics. We should be trading with countries that are playing by the same rules as we are, and we also need to focus on our own industry here. So we need to be trading with free countries. We need to be getting away from trading with China. I've said that we need to, when it comes to dealing with China, I've said that we need to ban state-owned enterprises from having any stake in resource projects here in Canada. We need to deal with Chinese influence on our university campuses. We need to deal with unrestricted residential real estate purchasing by foreign people. There's many people in China who are high up that, you know, I mean, China has been called, rightly so, a kleptocracy. And there's people who have squirreled away millions of dollars and they don't want to get caught with it, and they throw it into real estate here. They don't care if they're paying 10% above market or 15% above market. They want to just get their money somewhere safe. And we have communities in BC where half the community, nobody lives there, because people who are not from Canada are just parking their cash. And we have, you know, detached homes in Toronto. The average price of a detached home in Toronto is over $1 million. It's even more so in BC. And our own people can't afford to buy homes. And this is an issue that crosses all party lines. I mean, you know, you want to talk about affordable housing, which is supposedly like an NDP thing. Well, let's crack down on foreign real estate purchasing, right?
No.
So we can deal with that. I mean, that's conservative. We don't have to say, you know, we don't have to say, oh, well, that would be impacting free trade if we don't let other countries, you know, have a unrestricted access to our residential real estate market. We have to put Canada first. And we have to do what's right for our people here in this country. And that's something that we'll always do. So another thing that deals with housing, and, you know, we talk about winning in the GTA. Well, we didn't have any policies last time that actually dealt with things that people in the cities are concerned with. Yeah, like these little tax credits are nice, but what about the fact that they can't afford to buy a home? So dealing with the housing is several issues. Obviously, there's foreign purchasing, but it's also immigration. So when you take a look, I'm the only candidate that says we need to reduce our immigration levels. And so our immigration levels are actually much higher than the average for developed nations. In fact, it's about double of what the average is for developed nations. We need to bring it down to that level. And when you take a look, the average conservative response. When I say conservative, I just mean people that, the sort of, mainstream conservative approach is, well, it's a supply issue. You just need to build more houses. Toronto was the fastest growing city from a housing building perspective 2 years ago, more in North America, more so than Phoenix. So we're building a lot. We put nearly 30,000 housing units online a couple of years ago in Toronto. 150,000 new people settled in the GTA that year. That is a supply and demand imbalance that cannot be fixed just by trying to build more. We are building a lot. It's an issue with immigration levels. Now, look, if I was from another country, I'd want to come here too. So God bless them for wanting to come here, but we have to make sure we have a policy that puts Canada first. And the high levels are pushing real estate values, which actually ends up inflating our GDP. So Justin Trudeau can be like, hey, look, our GDP is good. But when you take real estate and housing and stuff out of GDP, we haven't grown much at all for like 12, 13, 14 years. So when you bring that amount of people in, it's a pressure on middle class wages. So that's why these big corporate interests are always saying, oh yeah, more immigration, because it's good for their bottom line. It's a pressure on middle class wages. It pushes housing prices up, which benefits other industries. But we need to deal with immigration. We also need to deal with money laundering, which is a major issue. So we need to have a moratorium on foreign residential real estate purchasing. And I don't care if someone from the US wants to buy a cottage or something like that. I don't mind that. But when we're having people from other countries who are buying 15 condos in one go and then renting them out to people in Toronto who live and work there who can't afford them, that's a problem. So that's what we need to address. And obviously, no illegal immigration, that should be a given. But okay, I'll cover a couple of issues quickly, and then we'll do a question and answer.
And before you leave, I want you to explain what I do with this.
Absolutely, that was one of the things
I just got that in the mail, right?
Perfect.
Like I see your name on there, I want to mark that number 1. But what do I do?
Yeah, sure. Well, you got the first part of it, so that's good. Okay, so I'll talk just, and if I forget anything, you guys can ask, but I'll talk quickly about firearms, and then I'll talk about, I'll talk a little bit about Western alienation, we'll talk about voting, and then we'll go to questions. So, when it comes to firearms and what Justin Trudeau has done, we have to do more than just undo what he's done. We have to take back ground that we've lost. And the issue when it comes to firearms, the issue when it comes to anything out there in politics, we can't just have a different policy. We have to win on the narrative. And the narrative when it comes to guns is that somehow putting more restrictions on legal gun owners is going to solve gun crime. So we can't buy into that at all because it's wrong. And if we buy into that narrative, then we get pushed down that path. So we have to be hard on gangs and gun crime and the smuggling over the borders. We have to be hard on that. We have to put in things like mandatory minimums and put money into task forces. But we also need to advance gun owner rights. And I have a great plan for that. It's on my website, you can see more. But basically, the idea is it's about time we had some rigid self-defense laws in this country. Well, I'll tell you, so being in the position that I'm in, you get threats. And I'm thankful that I'm a firearms owner. I'm thankful that I have firearms in my house, and I don't care if anybody knows it. I'm glad they know it, and they'll get to see what I own up close. So, but we have to. So, self-defense laws for the judicious use of a firearm. Obviously, we have a common law self-defense doctrine in law, but you shouldn't have to go to court for 2 years and have your whole life in upheaval and not be sure what way it's going to turn out. It should be a given that if you defend yourself, that you should be. The law should be on your side. So we have that, and then we also have expanding the rights of legal firearms owners. I don't mind the licensing. But I want the same rules. If you're licensed to use a particular type of gun, it should be the same rule. The idea that I can go, like I live out in the country, so I can go out there and I can shoot a high-powered rifle, that's fine, in my backyard. But if I were to shoot a little .22 pistol, I could go to jail. That's not really right. So, my law, my plan brings back handgun hunting and self-defense, things like that. So these things were legal for decades in Canada, and they should be legal now. There's places. I spoke to a guy from the Yukon the other day, and he does tours for hunting and other things in the Yukon. And he said, there's areas out there where you can't really, based on the brush and all this type of things, you can't really handle a rifle very well, and you come across, bears with their cubs. And he said, there is kind of a way to get a wilderness carry, but you can only get a little revolver, and it wouldn't help you much anyways, and it takes you a year to get approved for it. This is a big country. We need to make sure that people have the right to use things they're licensed to use. There's licensing for everything. Driving big trucks, flying planes. I don't know how to fly a plane, but if you're licensed to fly a plane, you should be allowed to do it. So if you're licensed, you should be allowed to use your firearm. I was at a conference this morning where probably the predominant portion of people there range from hardcore separatists to soft separatists. And I just want to say, and I'm not in no way, I'm in no way undermining the resentment, and I think it's valid, and I think you should fight for your rights, and I think you should do everything at the provincial level to do that. But I do think, we know our motto from sea to sea. It came from Psalm 72, verse 8. And that verse says, he shall have dominion from sea to sea and from the rivers to the end of the earth. And I think that Canada, it was more than just luck that we became a nation during the time of, American expansionism and all that. The fact that we're here, and at just the right time where America was not quite big enough and just afraid of Britain to not do anything. It's no accident, and we have a mandate to spread peace, order, and good government and the values of freedom and liberty around the world through our own example. And I always want to see a Canada that's sea to sea And, you know, maybe that's just a sentimental thing, but to me, I hope that Canada is always a C2C nation. And you know what? Fight for your rights, and I'll do everything I can as leader to make sure that you're getting what's fairly due. But, you know, to me, Canada's C2C. And to me, that strikes at my heart.
How would you become leader, how are you going to win over, you know, the GTA?
Good question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Quebec.
Yeah. Okay, so the way that we do. Okay, so all right. Should we go into questions? Or?
Yeah, we can go into questions, and one little caution with questions. Sometimes people like to give a speech. And at the end of a long speech, there might be a question. We're not going to do that today, okay? We're going to have maybe a little bit of background on your question if needed, but then get to the question so we can have lots of questions. Okay, and we had a question right here, and then maybe over to this lady. You had a question, did you?
I can answer this question.
Okay,
I'll repeat it so everyone can hear. I'm sure. Yeah. So his question was, how do we do well in the GTA? And someone added in Quebec. So let me address that right now. To deal with the cities, there's actually several ways to do it, and it's a combination. So one is having policies that impact them. So we have to address, for example, housing, drug addictions. Drug addiction is another issue. Well, drug addiction is everywhere, but it's a city issue as well. Poverty, drug addiction, housing, and I mentioned a little bit. I'm the only one with a housing plan, and I spoke about it, and it's fairly comprehensive. No one else is touching it, but I'm telling you. In the GTA, there isn't, and when I say GTA, I live 200 kilometers from the GTA, and my housing prices are inflated because of the GTA. So this is like, it's a major issue. So there isn't a single person in South Central Ontario that housing prices are not in their mind. So you need to have good conservative answers to deal Liberal majority provincially down to 7 seats. And we have 120 somewhat seats in Ontario. He gave them the whooping of a generation. And he was campaigning, one of his main planks was repealing the sex education, the provincial sex education of the Liberals. And he got major buy-in from a lot of new Canadians in the GTA, and the 905 is like the sort of suburbs of the GTA, Greater Toronto Area, that have a lot of family values, and they don't like the fact, they don't want their kids to be taught that they might not be a boy, or they might not be a girl, or there's 70 genders, or whatever number they're saying. They don't like that. In fact, they're up in arms about it. But if all we are to them is a rich, tax cut, immigrant-hating party, they don't see a reason to vote for us. So if we have some values issues that touch on some of these things, we can say, hey, there's actually a moral difference between the Liberals and us. These guys are off the deep end when it comes to, promoting. I mean, this idea right now, gender dysphoria is spreading dramatically, and I sponsored a petition that asked for a national inquiry into the fact that people in the foster care system are something like 10 or 15 times more likely to be put on drugs for this stuff, that alter their development and this type of thing. And I want to know why, right? Why are the most vulnerable kids amongst us way more prevalent in this? And the Liberals are saying, if your kid thinks that he's a girl but he's really a boy, and you try and get him some counseling to help him figure that out, you could go to jail for 5 years. If you're a conservative and you can't find a critique for that, you're not a conservative.
This lady here's been keen to ask a question for a long time, so she's driven from southern Alberta to ask a question. Go for it.
The webinars that I have been able to watch.
What's your name, if you don't mind me asking?
Gwyneth.
Okay, thank you.
You could repeatedly say, I will, I will. Our government is not based on I, it's based on we. How are you going to address this if you become Prime Minister? There are a lot of the red blues out there. How are you going to sway them so that you get to do your I will?
Well, unlike other leaders, I'm not going to interfere in local nominations. And if you guys elect someone, that's on you. I'm not going to disqualify this because I don't like them. So it'll be up to you guys to elect some good.
First name again?
Tynan.
Tynan, good to have you.
Hi, Tynan.
How are you? In 2015, I represented Canada as a young entrepreneur delegate at the G20 Young Entrepreneurship Summit. And it was a really amazing experience. I'm an entrepreneur that works in technology. And one thing that we found as we were interacting really with a bunch of other of the G20 young entrepreneurs was that in their countries, it seems that technology gets a little bit more focus. And you brought up, elements of social media, Facebook, Google, and the censorship. The problem a lot of the time from us that work in the technology industry is that in Canada, we don't get the support so that we can contribute. So oftentimes these companies won't set up headquarters here because there's such a talent draw here. There's nothing, our universities are way behind in education. I'm just curious if you have a plan to address one, bringing companies here so that we actually can have a bit more say into how they're run, such as Google. They have offices here, but they're often quite shady. But then also what you have to do with entrepreneurship and building new technology companies from within Canada.
Good, thanks.
That's a really good question, and so I'll address it as best I can. So I think part of it actually has to deal with helping increase the depth of our capital markets here in Canada so that we don't have young entrepreneurs like yourself going south to get seed funding. So I've thought of some different things. I really like the idea of crowdfunding, and a lot of times crowdfunding gets tripped up because of our overly protective securities laws. So I think we really need to take a look at loosening some of those so that we can really let Canadians fund Canadian businesses. When it comes to creating the educational environment, I've been very clear that I want our institutions to be actually teaching people, our higher institutions of higher education to actually be teaching people and not just indoctrinating them. So. So federal funding to universities will be dependent on them having robust programs, in the STEM fields, for example, as opposed to, other fields that are really not as valuable to Canada. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, hi, my name is Shirley. The economy is going to be really, really important because, although, equally important are the issues you brought up about, morals and things like that, but Trudeau is pretty much bankrupt our whole, our country. And I think the West is especially vulnerable. What do you, like, when you said you're going to do something about equalization, like what do you mean? And do you have any plans? Like,
Sure.
Yeah, like, because you were going to address the Western alienation, but you didn't get around to it yet. So I think we should talk about that.
So the question was basically, how are we going to deal with the economy, with the massive debt that Trudeau has slapped on, and even more specifically in the context of the West with equalization and things like that. So the quick answer, and unfortunately it has to be quick. So we obviously have to focus on getting our economy back on track again. The energy and natural resource sectors are a big part of that, and so I spoke a little bit about getting out of Paris. Repealing C-69 and C-48. I didn't get a chance to talk about dealing with some of these activist groups that are always shutting things down, but I do. So for one, we're not going to be funding them. Can you believe the federal government gives money to Tides, which is now called Make Way, World Wildlife Federation, Sierra, all these. So there won't be a dime of my federal money going there. Okay, sorry. I guess so. I'm sorry. I guess we can't address it fully. There's just so many questions. But so part of it is getting the economy back on track, cutting regulation and red tape, doing some tax reductions to encourage innovation and growth. But it's really about a growth. There is waste reduction as well, but it's really about economic growth, which has been stifled.
So you're planning to repeal the 4869?
That is correct. Yes. Yeah.
And I think you have a policy similar to one south, 2 out, 1 in, something like that?
Yeah, so I have a regulation policy for every 1 regulation in, 2 out. We want to streamline
This lady now, we'll have one more over here and then we'll move to that side, okay?
Yeah.
My name is Linda and I just wanted to know how you got so wise because you're so young. moved to the PPC. So how do you bring that Conservative Party back? I think there's lots of conservatives because Maxime Bernier tried to, anyway, you know.
Right. Well, you have to win, and the ship goes where the leader sails it. And with the right leader in place, then I mean, honestly, there's a lot of good conservatives in the Conservative caucus, and if your conservative isn't a good one, then elect another one type of thing. But it's about the leader and the direction that he sets. And thank you, I appreciate it. I've been through a lot of different experiences in my life, and they weren't all pleasant. But thank God that going through trials teach you something typically, and so I'm thankful to have been able to have learned some things in my years here. So thank you.
Great, Jared. This gentleman had a question?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I've never dealt with politics. This is my first year because of kind of the field. I don't know you. You don't know me. What I want to know is, in the House of Commons, people are always asked yes or no questions. You dance around the bush and never give a straight answer. The question has to be asked again. Along with that, there's this wee scandal and all this other crap. How are you going to assure voters here that you're not going to fall into these little traps and put your personal gain in front of our needs?
Can you
Thank you.
paraphrase that good question for those folks out there? Yeah.
So he was expressing his disgust with politicians that don't answer questions in the House of Commons, and he was talking about the weed scandal and saying, how can I guarantee you guys that I'm not just going to feather my own bed in Ottawa when I'm there? So if I wanted to, and thank you for that, if I wanted to be popular and feather my nest, or whatever the phrase is, I wouldn't be running the campaign that I'm running. I almost got. I almost got kicked out of the party earlier this year based on certain stands that I took. And if I had half a sense for my career, I probably would have just apologized or something. So. I suppose it's up to you to evaluate whether you think I'm genuine and authentic, but there are real risks to what I'm doing and running this campaign. And if someone else wins, it's very likely that they're going to take a run at me, and I may have a short career. So that's why it's important. It's important to win, and I'm in it to win it. And another thing I wanted to say: this race is not over. It's not remotely over. There's about half of the Conservative membership doesn't even know who they're voting for. If you're going to vote for a McKay or an O'Toole, you probably know who you're voting for already. So, that 50% can swing this. And so don't let anybody tell you it's a lost cause. And if you're worried, if you want some insurance, then rank someone second or something. But there's no need for strategy. You vote for the person you want and you rank them. That's the only strategy you need to have.
Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. My name's Slogan. I have 100 questions, but I'll just ask one, obviously. You touched briefly upon revisiting the Constitution.
Yep.
Would you consider, or are you looking at, adding property rights to the charter?
Yeah, I think property rights should be on the table if we revisit the Constitution. Good question. Yeah.
And you stated that, haven't you, Derek, in some of your
I have.
your platform? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Good. So it has to be there. Now you've been waiting a long time, and then over to you guys. Promise.
Hello, my name is Barbara. In October 2019, a poll showed that 17% of people voted for Liberals as opposed for Conservative Party. And most of the 17% were women. Again, another poll showed that women of all ages put healthcare either as number one or number two. Is there any way that you can downplay your strong personal principles on abortion and highlight how much abortion actually costs the Canadian healthcare? At 100,000 abortions a year and $500 per procedure, that's $500 million. And when you add in $750 million
I was just going to add that too.
Canada adds for abortions abroad, that's $1.5 billion and a quarter. Would you be able to get that across to women, that the reason that there is not enough money for healthcare for their problems is because the money is spent on abortion? And that is the reason they should be voting for Conservative Party, because then there will be more money in the kitty.
Thank you. Yeah, I think there's all different kinds of ways to address that issue and others, and I think that's a good one. And you know, conservatives can have good answers for things like healthcare and other types of issues, and we can't be afraid to address them. So thank you for raising that. Lessons from
System's broken right now.
absolutely.
And we're moving forward in 5 years in terms of not,
That's
not
right.
getting anything done. We haven't had a pipeline out west forever.
Yep.
So sometimes you just gotta put the hammer down and say, done.
Well, we're afraid to get things done here, and we're afraid to try things differently. And I think we need to have the guts, or you used another word. Yeah, we need to have the guts to be able to try things new and get things done. So.
Okay, over to this gentleman here.
First, want to say thank you for your time and sacrificing your family for doing this. Is there a way that we can stop Canada from being hammered on pollution when there's dozens of Asian cities and countries where they wear a mask in traffic every day just so they can breathe, let alone COVID? And yet they're constantly hammering Canada for our pollution. We got to reduce this, reduce that. It just doesn't make any sense to me. What is nobody putting pressure on those countries, or is there no way we can do that because they're on their own?
Well, a lot of those countries look out for their own interests, and it's about time Canada started looking out for its own. But you make a good point, which is a prime reason why we should get in the Paris Agreement, right? I mean, that's a great example of something we should be in.
Sir, your next question right here, Dirk.
Derek, our current Prime Minister is working on a CERT ethics complaint right now. And he probably has another 10 coming. Our Finance Minister has also got a couple ethics committees. Is there any thoughts to bring in accountability? Politicians need to be held to a higher standard than the average person, but they're not being held to any kind of standard. And that goes down even into the courts these days. They're not being held for some of the decisions and things that they do. Any thoughts along that line?
Yeah, so I think we need to have some strict laws when it comes to corruption in politics, and I have some ideas for that. There's a lot of cheating that goes on behind the scenes in nomination and leadership races, and I'm not really talking about our party, although it does happen. But it's very rampant in other parties, particularly in the leadership races. And it's a shame that someone could cheat in that, and then they become the prime minister of the country. So I would make cheating in these like right now, it's perfectly legal to cheat in a leadership race. It's considered like a private thing. So I want to have criminal sanctions for cheating in the political process, and I also want to give the ethics commissioner more authority to command witnesses and things like that. So I think we need to have more teeth and more transparency in this process.
One more here. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, sir. My name is Stephen, and my question is that Parliament's closed, but yet as taxpayers, we're going to end up paying the Chinese to make these investments in our embassies. And even in Alberta here, they got the steel business for the solar farms that they're planning on building. And I have no say in that. Just because it's the lowest bid, this gentleman needs money for technology. So they should be subsidizing that to match our bid, because we know China subsidizes their companies, right? Am I correct?
You are
Saying
correct.
that? And having 99 as a postal code, for any of us out west that love hockey, we know how 99 united our country, right? I mean, that was fantastic. Every game he played for Canada. he gave it his best, so is that what we're gonna get from you, buddy?
Well, we need to divest from China almost completely.
So how do you stop that now?
Well, I mean, you start by just banning them. Like, for example, I don't believe state-owned enterprises should own any resource project.
Oh,
Right.
we agree with that. But it's a majority. Like, I'm sure if you did a Twitter vote, 96 or 97% would say, what the? You know, no, we don't want that. But yet, it's going to go through.
Yeah.
And we have no say at all as a taxpayer, like nothing, for such a big investment. And it pisses off our US allies, I'm sure, because they gotta be nervous. What do they mean now? They're gonna do this, you know?
Captured the Western sentiment there, that's good, that's awesome.